Anyway, you've studied Ra a lot more than I have. Can we just talk a little bit about why you think that this was so important to him, that people really started applying human design to the children? And yeah, let's just talk, if we don't mind segueing to that, since we've been talking about childhood so much.
Yeah, it's everything to start with them, because we won't ever be correct the way a child can be correct if you feed them and if you let them live the way they're supposed to live. It's just, so that means that almost no one on earth is actually correct. It's actually who they're supposed to be. And I don't know if you see a lot of very small children, but I come to have a few babies and toddlers around me, and you can sort of see their light fading away from the homogenization, and that's one of the most heartbreaking thing to witness. And when you have one that is still have a little bit of light, because they're all homogenized, but have a little bit of their light, and you can say, wow, that's so cool. That's those person, I want to see them grow up, and I want to see who they are going to be, because they're not going to be robots or sheep or whatever humans we have right now, mostly.
Right.
And it's just like giving people a moral compass by telling them how they have to be. That's not having morals. That's just being good at pretending to have them. I've been studying homogenization way before I come to human design. That's why human design was like, oh my God, are you kidding? There's a tool for that. I've been looking for it for years.
Where have you been my whole life?
Yeah, and I was seeing all those children and teenagers in my office as a psychologist, and we were discussing things and things like, I remember one of them, for example, she admitted that she was cheating at exams. Mm. And we were talking about it, and instead of shaming her about it, why would I do that? We just discussed about why we don't lie and why we don't cheat and why there's a point to it. And I looked at her and I say, I don't care if you lie or if you cheat. I'm a little bit sad if you feel the way I feel when I cheat and I lie, because when I cheat and I lie, I feel like shit about myself. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like I'm a bad person in a very visceral way. Mm-hmm. And even if the results are good and the outcomes, and even if no one is hurt, and even if it doesn't matter if you feel like you lose a piece of yourself when you do it. And she stopped almost instantly. She stopped, and we started discussing things very differently. And that's a change that is so precious to see and to witness. There's some kind of sacredness in it. Yeah. And doing that with much smaller children, and hearing for them, I believe, hearing an adult say to them, I don't mind, you do whatever you want. If you want to cheat, if you want to lie, if you want to be bad, if you don't want to share, if you don't, it's just, is that you? If it's you, good. Then you're gonna get that amazing thing that comes with being yourself, that makes morals just non-relevant in the discourse. Mm. And so for me, yeah, of course, if you have a tool that is taking children out of homogenization way earlier than anyone could, it's magical. And I can so understand why he wanted that for people. And he's discussed as this very pessimistic and nihilistic man. I don't think he was. I really don't, because when I'm hearing him, he has that thing that is saying basically like, we get to be human when we are ourselves. instead of like agents of the program and just little robots or little sheep, and that are very, very unhappy with themselves and with their lives. And he wanted to give that as a gift to people. That's not pessimism. That's not nihilist. That's not nihilistic at all. Like that's beautiful. And I can understand why, because he had that thing like
he had a very provocative channel, like the gate of the Clarion or the cross of the Clarion or something, right?
He had the cross of
so
the
it was
Clarion.
a very and I want to go there because I do think a lot of my audience either isn't that familiar with Ra's original work or has moved on into something else, because his voice is, it feels a little like your alarm clock going off. It's like I'm in this slumber, I'm in this delusion or whatever. And I mean, I'm just going to compare it to like how I felt this morning. I was still pretty tired when my alarm clock went off. And so it's kind of this piercing, like shock feeling to the whole body. Like I wasn't done sleeping. And so he really believed that or at least some of his teachings, he says that I'm here to wake up the not self and help people start coming back into alignment with their authentic self and come into alignment with their human design. And so, but a lot of people, once you've woke up, you're like, if your alarm goes off after you're already awake, it can kind of sound annoying, right? And so I think there's kind of now that I'm in my experiment, I do find that I'm like, I don't necessarily need all that shock value all the time, but I do appreciate still what his role in the storyline was. I think that I think he was very much in fidelity to the role that was given to him. I think he performed it well. And again, performance isn't the word probably either, because he was just trying to stay in alignment with his own authority and his own, inner guidance and his own design. So anyway.
Yeah,
but yes, he does have a strong voice, and that some of the things he describes too sound very heretical, like because he was a line 5, and so he has a lot of like, I don't care about religion, I don't care about morals, I don't care about, and parents, that's a little bit of a, what do you think? I can't just teach my kids to do whatever they think and do whatever they feel and not have any concern for other people. Like there's, again, I don't think that's exactly what he was saying, or nor what you're saying, but you're saying I feel like the message is more like, wait a minute, when you do behave in a way that hurts other people, how does it affect you? If that's probably more motivating than just me shaming you from the outside. And even something as simple as first-time obedience. So first-time obedience was a huge parenting trend in like the late 90s, early 2000s, meaning that I shouldn't have to ask you more than once or twice to do something before you respond. Well, that's great for generators sometimes, but it's also placing the locus of authority outside of the child and into the hands of the parent. And so if you spend your whole life training a child to always let someone else be the authority rather than their own inside or their own relationship with God, or however you describe that, their own inner authority, then what happens is they leave your home and they're still looking for someone to be the boss. And so they end up in these relationships. Well, now there's a trend here 20 years later, right, where everybody's describing every relationship as narcissistic and they're a victim to it. And I'm like, no, that's the product of learning your whole life that someone else should be the boss of your life and then having to try to work through that as an adult. And we can avoid all that by teaching kids to listen to their own bodies and say, for a generator, how do you feel in your guts when you're doing something like that? Does that feel right for you? And my one generator that we were just talking about that is got the deaf gate and the 2838, he often does feel wrong as he's doing it. And that's part of his job, is to struggle with himself sometimes in order to make different, more aligned decisions. He actually cares about people very much. It's just sometimes he's impulsively just doing what his body said to do, and his brain hasn't caught up with him to go, wait a minute, if that breaks, my mom's going to be mad. Maybe I shouldn't throw it. So there's a whole lot of process going on inside. It's very individual. And then, I mean, don't even get me started about PHS, because he's like, one of his cognition is feeling. So it's got to, he hears how he feels when you're talking to him, not what you're saying at all, So yeah, it's way more complicated than just do it because I said so, right. And as an adult, I have had to come to, like you, just like you, I've come to my own way of figuring out morality from the inside out. It hasn't been from the outside in, someone else telling me this is how you should behave.
And it's just, it's such an exhausting way to do it too. It's because it's coercion. Yeah. It's coercion, and so you need the coercion all the time. You need it's like dictatorship. You need the fear all the time to make sure people are behaving the way you want them to behave. So it's about control, and no one control people. They just except if you exhausting yourself trying to control them over and over and over again. And it's not working.
And I say that to my son. I'm like, that I absolutely can't control your behavior, right? And he kind of looks at me like, oh, that's not what this is about. And I'm like, no, you're the only one that can stop you. If you're doing something wrong, you're the only one that can stop. Like, I can't make you stop. I can ground you, I guess, but I can't make you stop. And it's putting that control back in his hands. Like, what are you going to do with this powerful thing called a decision? What are you going to do with it? It's yours. It's not mine.
So very important.
Okay, well, we're almost out of time. So I guess for people, I'm thinking, I know you work with a lot of people that are new or newish to human design. If you could leave them with like something to just really experiment with in the next week or two, either as themselves or as parents, what would you be your guidance, your wisdom that you would offer them?
Like, I guess there are 3 points all the time. There's the thing where you just feed a child according to their PHS, because that's the only way to feed uniqueness and not homogenization. Because if you don't feed them that way, it's going to be much, much, much harder to follow their strategy and authority.
Right.
And let them sleep the way their type is supposed to sleep. And
so important.
So important. So Ra was saying about generators, no bedtime. Just you go to sleep when you're exhausted, and that's it. Like, if you're a manifesting generator, just you can do stuff in the bed and to help with the process of sleeping. But if you're just a generator, just exhaust yourself. Let them exhaust themselves. And as much as you can without betraying your own strategy and authority, let them follow their strategy and authority. And if you do that, it's quite of a shift, because you can like let go of all the other things we talked about, like all the moral, all the what's wrong and what's good and what's right and what they need to have in their characters and stuff like this. But if you do that, there's a way where parenting becomes so much easier and so much more rewarding, both for the parent and the child, and you have an actual relationship with them, not some kind of hierarchy where you try to tell them what to do, or you try to manipulate them into doing what you want them to do. And that would be the human design parenting kit. Like, you give that, and then you can learn about the profiles and about the definition and about the stuff, but that's not as important. Like, those 3 things change everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't expecting you to mention PHS because for adults, they usually say strategy and authority are the first thing, and experiment with that. For what I think the recommendation from what I call fundamentalist human design, people that study closer to Ra's sources, is like 2 or 3 years of your experiment of just following strategy and authority before worrying about PHS. So tell me, if you can, in 3 minutes or less, sorry, we're almost out of time. If you can tell me why your recommendation for children is to really follow the PHS first. I think I have a hunch why, but I would love to hear your opinion about that.
It's 2 things. First, we as adults have to decondition. They don't. It's not like you are born conditioned. You're not born conditioned. so that's why we have to wait, because we're not able to. It's natural for the body to eat that way, but all the not self and the conditioning is interfering with that sense. So that's why we don't eat the way we're supposed to eat, because we don't have access to it.
Right.
But if you want someone to not have to deal with the conditioning, then feeding them per the PHS for the first 7 years it's one of the biggest gifts you can give them, because then it's so much easier for them to access their consciousness. It's feeding their uniqueness, literally. So if you do that right away, you don't have all the work we are doing that is, it's so excruciating to decondition. It's so painful and so scary and so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can avoid that for them just by giving them what they need from the get-go. And if we do that, it's dominoes. So you have the right consciousness, so it's easier to follow your strategy and authority, and to see what you're supposed to see, and to share what you're supposed to share, and to meet the people that you're supposed to meet, and share all that outer authority with. So it's dominoes. So as adults, we can enter the dominoes by the strategy and authority, because we can then let the body feed itself the way it's supposed to be, but they don't need that. So that's, I'm answering the question, right?
I think so.
I never know.
I was like, no, my mind kind of went to this, this metaphor I was thinking of about fruit trees. We had an acreage, and I'm not saying I always grew up wanting to own this fruit orchard or whatever, but I learned so much about child rearing from taking care of plants, because every fruit has a completely different way to take care of it. Apples and grapes have completely different processes, right? And even, don't even get me started on date palms, right? Because they take 13 years before they're ever going to throw out some fruit that's worth eating. So and that reminds me of the line 6s, right? Some of us just have a longer timeline before. And when I'm speaking about fruit, I really see the fruit of a tree, metaphorically, as that moral development, that character development. You can't just force it out of a tree. The fruit comes from taking care, nurturing the environment it's in. And then, of course, there is some training, like you do with a fruit tree. You have to train the branches so it doesn't get too clustered in the middle, and it can get plenty of air and sunlight. But again, that training is very gentle. It's not like you beat the tree or coerce it to bear fruit, right? You're just gently giving it, making sure it has plenty of room for all of its beauty, so that it can so it gets enough sunlight to produce, right? And so it's a completely different approach to parenting. But when you're talking about PHS, I'm like, oh yeah, because if a tree gets struck by lightning, for example, and grows really crooked, it takes a lot of effort to move that tree back into alignment, a lot. And it may not survive it, actually. It may not ever bear fruit. It may just survive, right? But a tree that's been cultivated from the beginning to this is what I know you're supposed to produce, apricots or whatever, and I'm cultivating you to be able to do that to your best ability. That's a totally different process than trying to train a tree to stand upright when it's been knocked over by a big storm or something, so it's a really beautiful, that's the metaphor my head started going to. Sorry, when you were talking about PHS is really all about just really making sure that this tree is getting all the proper things it needs in order for it to, it's already got it in its DNA to do what it needs to do. You don't have to teach it how to grow, you don't have to teach it how to make fruit. It knows how to do that the inside. We just have to make sure it's safe, and protected from the elements, and it has everything it needs to grow. So
and like you're saying, when that's done, it's so much easier to take care of it, because you don't have to evaluate all the problems that are coming from misalignment. And with the children, it's the same. It's like you don't have to make sure they have a strong character and good grades, and they're good to people, etc. No, you just have to watch and to assess if they have the signature. You have a little generator, see if they're satisfied. That's all they need. It's just they don't need all the stuff. All the stuff is for us. It's for the mind. But all they need is just to be able to follow their strategy and authority, and then to access that sweet satisfaction. That's like the melody of their life.
The melody. Yes, I love that. Okay, well, if people want to follow you and want to continue to connect with you, I will put your Instagram handle and in the show notes so that people can find you. Again, this is Letitia, fantastic, and she is. It's been so wonderful visiting with you today. I hope you'll come back on the show again sometime. We have so much more we could talk about.
Thank you so much for having me. And as usual, it was so much fun to discuss with you. And I love hearing all those experience you have to share and all the ways, the abstract ways you're seeing the world. That's so cool for me. Yeah, people can find me usually most easily on Instagram. So the handle is a.fantastic, PHANTASTIC .experiment.